In the tradition of all the ways we've done this work, coming together as groups around our love for each other, I am so thrilled to welcome you today. When people around me started suggesting that we had a celebration for 40 years of my work, I was a little shy about that. But I love celebrating the work and the people who do the work. And I love parties, and I love to entertain.
When I met Linda, she has a magnetism about her that people immediately are drawn to. And I knew immediately I was dealing with a really special person.
I learned so much from Linda. I felt and still do feel like I found such a sister in her. This willingness to take risks, this willingness to be silly, this willingness to cry, this willingness to be out there, you know.
Linda has incredible skill of identifying these individuals in the community who have potential leadership and giving them the tools to do it themselves, not do it for them, but have them do it for themselves.
Linda Stout, I love you. It's so easy to love Linda Stout. Sharing her life force with the world.
I'm Linda Stout, and welcome to my adventure.
I've been a progressive activist all my adult life, as my father trained me to be. And I met Linda in 1985. I was blessed to meet Linda in 1985, and she's been a friend and fellow activist ever since, which is nearly 40 years. I think she's the most amazing person I've ever known in my life. And I feel it's been an incredible gift to know her for all these years. I feel very blessed by our friendship, and I honestly think that she's the most amazing. I've been in organizing for more than 40 years, and I do think she's the most amazing organizer I'm aware of in the United States today. She right now is doing teaching via Zoom in 23 countries. She has worked with all sorts of organizations. All sorts of organizations around the country have used her materials and copycatted her methods.
Voter registration has been a key component of our organization since the beginning. And something very unique about Kinston Teens is that we're a youth-led organization. We've been that way since the beginning. I started Kinston Teens, I was just 14 years old, a freshman in high school. So I couldn't vote, I couldn't register to vote, but we knew we wanted a component of our organization to be that voter advocacy and getting folks out to the polls. How can we get young people involved in registering voters and getting folks to city council and school board meetings and making sure we're engaged in the processes where these decisions are going to impact us and affect us. So even though we're, oftentimes not old enough to vote in our own organization, we recognize that we can get our parents to vote, our older siblings, or our neighbor next door. Let's do what we can to get them registered, make sure they know who's going to be on the ballot, and make sure they have access to whatever polling location is in their neighborhood. So we're an organization led by the same young people, the same poor people, the same disenfranchised people that we're trying to support and empower. So that collaboration, we're not some outsiders parachuting into a community to try to tell them what's best. We're a community who's been disenfranchised, who's gone through these same struggles and saying what's actually best for us.
Crystal says I am a native here of Kinston, North Carolina, and the board chair for Kinston Teens Incorporated. I also have served in the capacity of an elected official, a former city council member. Kinston Teens actually pushed me into my capacity of running for to be an elected official. I was working with the youth and volunteering with them all the time, and we were part of their mission is to attend local elected official meetings. So they were going to city council meetings and going to school board meetings and to county commission meetings, and we would come back and debrief about what took place at the meetings and talk about what happened at the meetings. And they were holding me accountable as the adult in the room to help them understand and navigate what their next questions may be or what their concerns were. And eventually it became, you should run, I was fortunate enough to be championed behind with young people when I decided to run. I just had young people who were part of the organization, not part of the organization, but who all loved me, and they really build my campaign. They build my esteem. They held me accountable. They showed up with me when I needed them to, and it was actually young people that really got me to that place of running for public office and winning.
My name is Courtney Pedersen. I'm an Eastern organizer for Blueprint North Carolina, working to create change and build power in Eastern North Carolina among BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. One of the things that inspired me about Linda's work was the fact that she kind of came through the work during the generation that I did. And in doing so, we had a lot in common. It gave us an opportunity to bring some of the successes that we've had in this work all the way back from the 60s to today. They would get it into the faith base. The churches were a very important part of moving information. So were barbershops and beauty salons and those places. That's where people went. So that's how information moved about in that day, because it was not even a telephone to pick up and call somebody or what have you. You have to remember also that voter registration was almost illegal for African Americans at that time.
My name is Robert Booth. I'm the executive director of Alpha Life Enrichment Center in Washington, North Carolina, supporting our community in a number of different facets. In our organization, we have an arm that supports emergency relief. So with that, we have a mutual aid emergency source warehouse where we're able to store and supply goods as needed. So in the case of a bad storm, flooding, we're able to support our community with the things that they need, from bare essentials to meals.
Our real component is youth development, teaching the youth about agriculture, about life skills and social skills. So the organization has a hands in a lot of outreach that we do. Community engagement, civic education. We provide training for individuals and groups to learn all those components of dealing with the community outreach. When we collaborate, we gain knowledge from other individuals. When we come together and collaborate with other groups and organizations, we gain that extra step on how to do things better, on how to be a better outreach for the community.
Miss Linda's tutelage and just insight and guidance has given me an outlook for our organization, ways that we can sustain ourselves, continue to support ourselves, be more diverse in the ways that we assist our community. The people that are in place in organizations like ours have definitely drawn some inspiration and direction from Spirit in Action. The trainings have been from everything from, helping to fund your organization to how it should be ran. Being able to give information about so many different facets of your organization has been helpful. It's almost like a one-stop shop. She knows everything top to bottom. You may not have grasped exactly, what Miss Linda was trying to convey in the training. She's always there to support you, even if you don't have any clarity on the direction that she wants to give. But she's always there to support you.
Hurricane Katrina happened, and people around the country, in addition to in New Orleans, were trying to figure out how to help. And for people like me and my friends who were organizers and who had certain kinds of skills that they thought they could bring to the table, were trying to figure out how they could do something meaningful, because there's only so much mucking out of houses that can be done, that stuff gets done, and then there's the whole rebuilding of a city. Because the schools in New Orleans, most people don't realize, were literally down to the last one were destroyed. If they were not destroyed, they were hugely disabled. Most of them were destroyed. And that the people who went to those, the parents of the people of the kids who went to those schools, if they wanted their kids to go to school, they had to leave the city. Suddenly it was like, okay, here's this huge problem. They're talking to all different kinds of people, but there's no voice of the kids. There's no voice of children in this mix. Kids are very, very appealing if they have something to say to the media. A group of us who knew each other as organizers around the country, Linda being one of them, we started to think about, how could this work? And what happened was that we realized that the first time we would ever be able to really get students to come together was when they came back. And that would be a year later. And we were all like, God, that's such a long time. But that we could, the summer of 2006, that we could plan a little summer program. If you have children who have suffered something enormous, and then you have parachuted them out of that place of enduring something horrible into something that was really good, and then you bring them back again, then you have got this perfect opportunity for children to vision the schools of the future.
I am Mazati. I am from New Orleans. I'm born and raised here. I used to do Kids Rethink back when post-Katrina, but I did it at age 12 on up to about, I would say 23, 24, where I started as a youth organizer and then transitioned into a college intern. Rethink is a nonprofit organization that puts the voices of youth into the changing and reconstructing process of New Orleans schools. Nowadays, it has changed a little bit more to look more at not just reconstructing New Orleans schools, but also looking at factors of race, gender, and everything else that we have to identify with our identities as young people in these spaces. Majority of our lives, our waking life, is in these school spaces, and at the time, one of the biggest problem was like acknowledging that if we're going to be in these spaces for so long, these spaces have to be built around providing us with an environment to not only survive, but thrive. At one point, there was a group of kids who did a 21st century green school, and not just a space, but like the whole building.
As a kid, I was a youth organizer in an organization called Rethink. At the time, it was Kids Rethink New Orleans Schools. And we used to do a summer program every year after Katrina here in New Orleans. In the beginning, Linda Stout would, most summers, doing like a week-long kind of visioning session, really getting young people to start envisioning schools in a different way, which was new and big for a lot of us. It's been such a reminder for me of how many like internal walls Linda helped kind of break down in the context of how we think about school. How can we move past what we've seen in New Orleans schools and then what a lot of us witnessed during evacuation kind of all across the country, and distill those things into something that makes sense for New Orleans kids, by New Orleans kids.
I'm tremendously grateful to Linda for her support for Rethink, because her support, her willingness to come back and to do this visioning every year and to continue to be there. I mean, the early years of an organization are so risky, and without Linda's belief in me and belief in the concept and belief that the New Orleans public schools should deserve the voice of young people, I'm not sure that Rethink would have made it through those early years.
Progressive Communicators Network, the seeds of it were coming out of the Piedmont Peace Project and seeing what a difference media work can make to move forward the message and grow the base and contribute to the success of an organization. Linda was committed to doing that. And, it was a whole different media landscape, even just it was the 2000s. We weren't really there thinking about really making our own media. So we were still, how do we work with this media landscape? And wanting to draw together people who were working with social justice, peace movements, the racial justice movements, who were doing communications, because this was like an area that was tacked on or not as much addressed, and wanting to bring them together to like share best practices. Maybe that was our beginning thought. And, at first there was a challenge to bring people together. And I was very fascinated with them as a group of people and their perspectives because of how they, were within the movements and seeing the action, but also because of the role of communicating to the outer world. They were, thinking about like, oh, okay, how do we communicate to someone? Or how do we use culture, popular culture, arts to bring our message along? We moved around the country. We made a commitment to have the total number of participants be 50% of people of color or more. After Katrina in New Orleans, number of members of the Progressive Communicators Network became involved in the Katrina Information Network. And we decided, like Spirit in Action Progressive Communicators Network, like, okay, we're going to put some of our coordinating our network building time into doing that. So those connections then helped to have kind of rapid response when it was needed in times of crisis.
But I really appreciated Linda's work on community organizing, philanthropy, power building, communications, like on so many different parts of the work that she's done that I've followed and appreciated her out on the path in advance and then co-plowing sometimes. Stretch that analogy. Co-piloting or co-plowing, because it's a bit of like making the path by walking it. And sometimes she had previously walked that path, and then sometimes we were walking next to each other, trying to with other people, trying to blaze a path forward.
A lot of what she was teaching activists was that we were blind to the issue of class. The United States is very clear about race, but we're not so clear about class. And I was one of the hundreds of thousands of upper middle class activists who were working on a variety of issues. Preventing nuclear war, economic disparity, racial injustice, climate change, and so forth. But we were all almost universally blind to the issue of class. And she wrote her first book, Bridging the Class Divide and Other Lessons for Grassroots Organizing, about this problem.
Bridging the class divide for me is I, in my head, have see Linda as a person driving through the mountains, as I've done many times in my life, to have long conversations, to strategize, to let people know that they are leaders in their communities, to give them the tools to be leaders. But somehow, some way, I see myself through that book, like in the car with Linda in the passenger seat, just driving through the mountains, because that is much of my own work. And again, I think it's imperative that we work across race and class in order to build the future that we want and in order to gain collective liberation. So Bridging the Class Divide for me is a fairy tale and the truth all in one of a young mountain girl fighting her way through, but also having wins along the way.
Her being a white woman and me being a black man, and then how we were able to do this work in our respective communities, the challenges that both of us had. She had challenges as a white woman, I had challenges as a black male, and therefore, how all of that was brought together.
Linda Stout, I feel like, was, for me, a big reminder that we have to start the work that we're doing from a place that is founded in joy, liberation, and truly taking the time and space that it takes to break those walls down.
As a middle-class organizer, we were never going to win because all we were doing was speaking to the converted, speaking to other people who were college educated, and she was right to say that we had to bridge the class divide. In her book, she talks about all the ways we failed to do that. And so I thought, how can I really help this exceptional woman be more effective? And I realized the ways I could help were by donating myself and organizing other people to donate. I've continued to do that over the last almost 40 years. And it's been a rare privilege because I don't have the tools personally to organize in working class communities, but Linda does. And so by doing what I can do, which is donating to her work, I am enabling her to do that incredible work that I couldn't do myself. Through my connection with Linda and her connection with other people, we were able to build a bridge between Boston and North Carolina. And people in Boston who did not have a way of doing what Linda was doing, living in a very progressive state, were able to export their influence and their money to North Carolina. We organized 3 or 4 day trips down to tour the area where she was working, and people were just blown away and became very, very loyal donors.
I'm Lauren Conant. I'm a reconfigured primary care physician. I had the enormous treat of meeting Linda. I would say it was the mid-late 80s. And I think our common ground, we were both concerned about the nuclear freeze, and I was active in Physicians for Social Responsibility. My heels were being dragged in the sand to go to yet another evening meeting, and it turned out to be at the home of Lynn Holbein. Lynn urged me to come to meet this very interesting person from North Carolina. Well, I was somewhat in a snarky mood, but the evening started and this person started speaking. She spoke funny because she was from the South, but within a few sentences, holy smoke, she just filled the room with just extraordinary, refreshing new ideas about how to engage the disenfranchised. She was talking about the Piedmont Peace Project. And I was just set on fire with, my Lord, she's engaged poor blacks, poor whites, some of them illiterate, to become more enlightened about local, state, national issues, all those fitted together, to get them out to vote. And the creative idea of engaging local writers to use their works to excite these people to learn how to read and write. I mean, it really inspired you with a sense of hope for people who were in a hopeless situation.
It was clear to see way back then that Piedmont Peace Project was going to have power if they could persuade their legislators to get behind them, and that the way that they were going to persuade their legislators to get behind them was to have people get out and vote. It was a pretty simple formula, and it worked. Piedmont Peace Project did a lot of work with literacy. They would be quick to tell you that in their community, it was not about illiteracy, it was about low literacy, and that people in the Piedmont, for the most part, working class people read at about a 3rd grade level. But the second thing was that all of the material that people hand out about candidates and about voting are written in a way that low literacy people can't understand them at all. We are going to create a literacy program that's based around the stories of mill workers. And they created this whole program that was about listening to the stories of their own mill workers and their experiences at the mill, and developing stories from that larger body of information, and then writing it up and then reading it. And they had great success. They did a lot of great work with literacy.
Voter registration is essential. It empowers the organization to understand that they have power to influence their community. A lot of the communities that we serve, they may not be as informed about their voter rights or just the process of voting. So you try to meet folks where they are.
Take 10 actually did two things. One, it allowed organizations to build a volunteer base and talked about the importance of doing that. You can do more with other people helping you than you can do by yourself. The training was basically talking about how do you involve others in doing your work, volunteers. The other thing, the relational organizing part of this, is encouraging people to talk to people, to talk to their neighbors, to talk to their family members, to talk to their fellow employees, and that kind of thing. That Take 10 did. It actually talked about how you take 10 people and then they take 10 people and then you grow through that process.
So having access to the Take 10 training where we're able to hear from, award-winning and, experienced leaders in this field, this organizing space and civic engagement space, and get trained on the tools and resources to help us strengthen the work we're already doing has been a great help. So we're grateful to have had access to the Take 10 trainings and Spirit in Action. That training, whether in the group setting or even one-on-one, has definitely helped our members, me as a professional, our staff and board members as well, just get even more skilled and more invested in this work, and more trained about how we can go out in our communities and do even more.
Take 10 was very interesting, and it was very important to me because I felt like I wanted to make sure that we just kept our hand on the civic pieces of the organization, and anything that anytime that someone can bring an abundance of knowledge and wisdom to what we're already doing, I welcomed it, and I wanted to make sure that we could benefit, we could get it and utilize it and benefit from it as well. But you start doing things and you get your rhythm and you're thinking that you're doing it well until someone comes along who's an expert and they tell you that, had you ever considered this, and the 5-5-5 or the 10-10-10, because we had to start off thinking, well, we're a little smaller. How about if we can get each member to commit to 5? It happens so quickly. And we can never put it in that perspective. We're always thinking that whatever event we're at, that's where we're going to bring people in. But if you hold yourself and your friend and this next member and your board members accountable for making sure that 5 people are registered.
Along with voter registration, you have to have voter education. They have to be educated. They have to know what to do, how to do it. The training from Take 10 to help us with that, we were able to go out and set up and do data tracking and mapping, where we map the different areas in the city and within the county where the need were. So mapping was a good piece for us that we use.
Voting is a huge way to make a difference in your community, in your state, and in this country. We've seen how elections can get won by just a few votes, or just this one vote in the Electoral College can make a huge difference in the trajectory of your state, your country, or your city.
We are living in historic times, and we all have our part. We won't know exactly what part of history it is until later. We've been through white supremacist, fascist waves before, and we need to beat this one down as soon as possible to get to what lies beyond. And we all have some part to do in that, and we all got to figure out what that is in some healthy way so that we can sustain it.
This is a complex time. There's even greater need for helping groups and movements communicate in an effective way.
This year, after the election, you're going to learn how to train 10 people to reach 10 people, and you'll reach 100 people.
Collective visioning, to me, what stands out from that book, and I think what Linda embodies in everything that she does is the deep and very trusting and very needed work of working across race. I've learned a lot from collective visioning around poor people just building together regardless of what you look like, while also holding boundaries and having hard conversations with each other, knowing that not every poor person, especially across different races, is the same. And so collective visioning for me is a hope for collective liberation and how we can move forth, but also just a story about deep joy and love and a learning journey around like where we're from, where we're going, knowing that we have ways to go. I think is a gift of sharing wins for us, so that we can learn from past mistakes, learn from the wins that we've had already, while also building something new.
And I even think vision is obviously something that people think about when they think about Linda Stout, because she was always talking about what is our vision, what are we moving toward. Linda weaves things together. There aren't like lines and barriers. So vision was also a part of like the spirit of spirit and action. Like, what is the vision that we have, and we're encouraging and creating context so that people can be thinking about their bigger vision, talking about their bigger vision, making the bigger vision real.
I think every day is a day of building collective visioning. As a mother, and I would always ask my kids, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it could change from this summer to next winter. It would change from third grade to fourth grade, and it would change from 10th grade to high school, 10th grade to 12th grade. So I think that having that collective visioning about what we see for the organization and what do you see moving forward, it's always going to be about how many youth you can impact, how many people you can impact, what can we do different, and reflecting, always coming back after an event, after an outreach attempt, always coming back and debriefing and reflecting on what you did and what you can do better. I see that as the collective way of moving forward and knowing what you want to do 5 years and 10 years from now with the organization.
When I sat down for my first visioning session, I remember Linda turning off all the lights. People had pillows, people were on top of tables, under desks, surrounded by chairs, so they made their own little space. And I think I just found a little corner somewhere, and I just closed my eyes and I laid down. And I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And Linda just started telling us what to do. She was guiding us through the process, that process of like Tuck says, the time machine of going back in time, but also going forward in time and thinking about what does that look like. And not just in 10 years, what do you want to be? It was find yourself. Think of yourself right now. What are things you're passionate about? What are things that you care a lot about? In 10, 5, 20 years, do you still want those passions? And how do they shape your world? And for me, I went from being a realistic person, being I don't know, to being oh, almost anything is possible. I could do anything. I'm realizing that I do visioning constantly just to understand simple things in my life. Like I said, I was a college intern later on, and one of my first summers, I actually led a visioning process with the kids. And I was like, oh, full circle. This is great.
20 years from now, I see small local community groups having the funding that they need and that being an impact that Linda has left. I see statewide organizations and coalitions meeting regularly while also having a long-term strategy together across networks, across people, across regions, especially of North Carolina. I see North Carolina thriving. I see people building power, especially electoral power across North Carolina because of the work that Linda has done. I see people who are bold and carefree and courageous and who have everything they need to at least state what they want and identify what they want over and over again, and have your communities behind them who are also bringing the same tools because of Spirit in Action and people like Linda.
20 years from now, you'll look back at these organizations and they definitely will be pillars in the community that support and encourage and have a very much vested interest in seeing these communities move forward and progress.
You know, you continue to grow and you learn, because in the next 20 years, someone's going to look at your work and say, wow, that was awesome how they did that. So, let's see how we can implement that work into our plan. But yes.
I think it's crucial to support Linda continuing to do so, but she's not done. We need to cherish folks for the work that they have done and continue to support them based on that. So I continue to appreciate Linda's ongoing contributions, not just about appreciating what she's done in the past, but her ability to continue to do that.
My last take is Spirit in Action Take 10, and I love her logo, changing the way we do change. Wonderful. Thank you, Linda.
Linda's magic, I think, is that she goes deep into her own self, her own history, her own childhood, and she pulls out her deepest experiences, including her deepest vulnerabilities. And then she talks about them. And when people hear this really genuine person talking about her own vulnerabilities as a person growing up poor, they empathize with her and they understand and they get it. And this is what's so exceptional about her. And it's the basis of her organizing.
Linda, I hope you spend a bunch of time at the beach. I hope you get at least one more dog in your life to add to the family that you have. I hope you can rest and genuinely rest and have the resources and the funds and the means and the health that you need to enjoy life. I feel like you have worked for a very, very long time and you deserve the rest and the rewards of your work, and to see where your work leads for the next 20 plus years, while also just being on the sidelines, drinking a cup of tea, looking out on the mountain range as well.
I truly believe that that there's definitely a future for her work, a future need, and I think she has a space to make a big difference in building power in Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities.
That's the thing though, like people touch your lives in ways that even you don't realize until later on in life. When I was a kid, I did not talk. I did not think I was important. I did not think my voice was important. I did not think that I was allowed to speak my mind. I did not think that I was good enough to speak my mind, to think, or to even think for myself. I was like, I am living by the expectations of others and I need to reach those, right? And when I think deeply on it, I think what started to give me that confidence during that time period of rethink wasn't just going out and doing public speaking. It wasn't just doing the projects, but it was actually sitting with myself and sitting with my thoughts, because for a long time I was like, I don't like the silence, right? But then like sitting there and thinking about what could be. If it wasn't for Linda doing those visioning weeks, like if she hadn't introduced that to us, I don't know if I would have gotten to where I needed to be quick enough, gotten to that confidence of being like, my voice, my existence, it matters. And I think we all forget that it's okay to internalize some things and like think about it and envision it. And sometimes those envisioning isn't just about the space around us, but about ourselves. And like, I would thank Linda for intentionally, unintentionally helping me become a confident kid back then, in a time where I definitely did not believe in myself, because sometimes you need someone to believe in you. And she did that. And I appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm thankful for the work that she's done over the years. And hopefully, I'm able to take on the things that she's given us and carry that forward.
I want to thank Linda for making me feel free as a young person that was not feeling very free at the time. And for saying yes, she never said no. And that was a time where a lot of people were telling us no.
Yeah, just thank you, Linda, for your years of organizing, your commitment to our communities. North Carolina and the South is a very unique and special place, but I think there's so much potential here. Just has to get organized. So, the work that Spirit in Action and Take 10 has done in helping our communities and empowering nonprofits and civic groups to get more organized and train more organizers in our community would definitely have lasting impacts for generations and years to come.
I just think Linda is, I can't even begin to tell you how exceptional I think she is.
I deeply appreciated our interactions through the decades.
Grew up in a time that we talked to people and we didn't email people. We didn't have an email. We didn't have a cell phone. As a matter of fact, I grew up in a house that even until college, we did not have a phone in the house. And so we had other ways of transferring information. And we did that by talking to each other, talking to our family members, talking to our friends, talking to our church members, and people just throughout the community, neighbors and what have you. And that's how we basically that's how we got information. That's how we connected with information.
I think it's this time that we've got to say goodbye to our little iPhones and our computer screens and get out into nature.
In the closing of this ceremony, I want to express my deep, loving gratitude for all of you. I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping with the end of Spirit in Action.